It began with a whisper inside the palace corridors, an unheard-of request that shook even the most seasoned royal aides. Just moments ago, Queen Camilla reportedly issued a private demand that would have been unthinkable in Diana's lifetime. She wanted the jewelry. Diana's jewelry returned from William and Catherine. But what came next wasn't a compromise, it was a declaration. Catherine didn't just say no, she took a stand that may have just redrawn the monarchy's invisible lines of power. Before we go deeper into what this really means for the royal family, make sure to subscribe so you don't miss a single update. The confrontation didn't begin with a public statement or a media frenzy. It started quietly, behind the high walls of a palace known for keeping secrets buried beneath centuries of protocol. According to a high-level leak, Camilla approached Prince William in what was meant to be a private conversation. Her tone was reportedly controlled, but the message was anything but neutral. She wanted specific pieces from the late Princess Diana's jewelry collection to be returned. The justification? She framed it as a matter of tradition. Royal artifacts, she said, belong to the crown, not individuals. But those close to the situation claim it was never really about tradition. It was personal. Camilla's request came just days after the release of an official royal portrait featuring Catherine, her neckline graced by Diana's legendary emerald choker. The image went viral. For many, it was more than a fashion statement. It was a nod to Diana's enduring spirit, a tribute wrapped in elegance and defiance. And for Camilla, sources suggest it was a spark. One insider revealed that she saw the photo and made the call that same evening. Whether out of envy, assertion of dominance, or deep-seated insecurity, Camilla's request was clear. She didn't want the jewels in the public eye, at least. Not on Catherine. The confrontation escalated when Catherine entered the room. She had not been expected, but once she appeared, the tone shifted. She was calm, measured but unmistakably firm. Palace aides who overheard fragments of the exchange said there was no hesitation. Catherine rejected the request outright. These pieces were given in love, she allegedly said, her voice unwavering. They stay with my family. What followed was silence, a silence so sharp it could cut through royal armor. For a brief moment, titles and hierarchy vanished. It was a standoff between two women who have defined the emotional and symbolic tension of the modern monarchy. William, caught between the woman he loves and the stepmother who still walks in Diana's shadow, reportedly stood behind Catherine. He didn't speak much, but his presence was a message in itself. This wasn't just a marital alliance, it was a public show of unity, one that placed Diana's legacy above royal bureaucracy. To some, this moment marked a quiet but profound shift. The power wasn't where it once was. It had moved, and it had settled, quite firmly, around the woman who now wears Diana's jewels, not just as adornments, but as armor. This was never about diamonds or pearls. It was about the stories they hold, the pain they carry, and the legacy they protect. The jewels may be priceless, but their true value lies in the message they send. In refusing to hand them over, Catherine didn't just protect Diana's memory, she claimed her own place in the lineage of women who dared to define the crown on their own terms. The tension is no longer beneath the surface, it's out in the open. But to understand why this request has fractured loyalties inside the firm, we must return to the day Diana's jewelry first became a weapon in royal warfare. Each necklace, each sapphire, each gem once caressed Diana's skin, and each now holds whispers of her truth. These weren't just accessories. They were armor, they were rebellion, they were seduction. And after her death, the question of who would inherit her power through these priceless artifacts became a silent battle no one dared to speak of until now. The sapphire ring wasn't just the world's most photographed engagement token. It was Diana's first public declaration of defiance. She had chosen it herself, from a catalogue, breaking with royal tradition. No custom jeweler, no hidden heritage, just bold clarity in a world that demanded silence. That ring, encased in deep blue surrounded by diamonds, lived on her finger through years of betrayal, heartbreak, and reinvention. And when William slipped it onto Catherine's hand decades later, it wasn't just an engagement, it was a resurrection. The moment marked not only the continuation of a bloodline, but the spiritual passing of a crown crafted from suffering, the emerald choker worn famously as a headband in one of Diana's most unforgettable style moments spoke of freedom. It had once belonged to Queen Mary but came alive only when Diana reimagined it. It was never meant to be tamed, and neither was she. The palace reportedly grimaced when she repurposed the piece. But that moment became iconic not because of the accessory, but because of the message it sent: she would not be boxed in. That same choker, now resting against Catherine's neck in select state events, continues to speak long after Diana's voice was silenced. But for Camilla, every time it gleams in front of the cameras, it gleams at her, a painful reminder that no matter how hard she tries, Diana's presence refuses to fade. And then there were the earrings, what the press nicknamed the revenge diamonds. Unworn until after the separation from Charles, they became part of Diana's transformation. She knew when to wear what. Each pair became part of her silent vocabulary. The shimmering pieces she chose after official royal events became statements of independence. Pieces that refused to bow. And now, as Catherine continues to wear those earrings with quiet poise, the symbolism lingers. She doesn't wear them out of entitlement, she wears them to honor. But Camilla reportedly sees it differently. To her, each public appearance with those pieces feels like a haunting. After Diana's passing, her will split her personal collection between William and Harry with a special instruction. The items were meant to be held for their future wives. It was a coded message, not one rooted in protocol but in purpose. She understood that her jewels were more than heirlooms, they were ammunition. And William understood that too. When he gave Catherine that ring, he wasn't offering a piece of history. He was inviting her into a war she never asked to fight. And that is why Camilla's request carries such venom. Because the unspoken truth is, this Camilla was never supposed to wear any of it. She knows it, the family knows it, and perhaps most painfully, the public knows it. Every time Catherine steps out in one of those pieces, it reignites the old comparisons, the old loyalties, the old wounds. Insiders say Camilla has tried to brush it off with grace, but privately, it festers. And when the emerald choker re-emerged on Catherine recently, the tension behind palace doors boiled over. But this isn't just about jewels, it's about ghosts. Camilla has spent years building a reign atop ashes, but Diana's memory is not ashes, it is fire, and every gem Catherine wears fans those flames. There's no escaping the reality that the jewels weren't merely passed own, they were inherited with purpose. They were meant to guard a legacy. And now, as their power reawakens, the woman once crowned the other woman is finding herself eclipsed by a legacy she cannot outshine. And yet, the jewels didn't just pass through generations, they carried unresolved ghosts. Ghosts that Camilla could never escape, no matter how high her crown sat. She holds the crown, she holds the title. But the shadow that looms behind Camilla has always belonged to Diana. And now, as Camilla struggles to redefine her reign, her battle with a ghost has turned physical with jewels at the center of it all. Was this demand her final attempt to rewrite the script she was never cast in? Camilla's public journey has been a study in contrasts: a rise from outsider to queen, carefully choreographed smiles, perfectly timed speeches, and decades of media scrutiny that never fully let her breathe. From mistress to consort to sovereign in her own right, every step has been measured, every gesture scrutinized. Yet, no crown worn could erase the ever-present comparison to Diana, whose legacy is etched into the public consciousness with a clarity that no modern PR campaign can erase. While Camilla's reign is official, Diana's influence remains spectral, invisible, yet undeniable, shaping perception and shadowing every public appearance. Privately, insiders suggest, Camilla has felt the sting of being eclipsed, not just by history but by the present. Catherine's rising visibility, her poise, her frequent homage to Diana through jewelry, public gestures, and wardrobe choices, all of it reportedly stokes an unease. Camilla can neither fully articulate nor publicly acknowledge. Every sapphire and emerald worn by Catherine becomes a subtle reminder of what Camilla never possessed: the unshakable love of a nation and the enduring image of Diana's spirit. Some whispers claim Camilla's request for the return of specific pieces of Diana's collection was more than a claim to assets. It was a desperate effort to reclaim relevance and rewrite the narrative in her favor. Jewelry in this context is not decoration. It is power, legitimacy, and symbolism. Camilla allegedly views the possession of Diana's iconic jewels as a way to consolidate authority, to redefine her image from the shadowed consort to a sovereign who holds not just title but history itself. Rumors within palace circles speak of her insistence that certain heirlooms remain within sovereign use, an effort to formalize ownership, and in doing so, erase any lingering reminders of Diana's unmatched presence. It is a calculated maneuver, a psychological gambit that blends entitlement with strategy, designed to fortify her legacy against the relentless pull of public memory. Yet, despite her careful planning, Camilla's attempt to assert control collided with forces beyond her command. The younger generation, the heirs of Diana, the guardians of her story, had already positioned themselves on a different trajectory. Every glance Catherine casts in public, every carefully chosen accessory, every subtle homage to Diana is a reminder that the crown alone does not command loyalty. Symbolism carries as much weight as ceremony, and in that intangible arena, Camilla's move may have been too late, too heavy-handed, and ultimately futile. In the shadows of palaces behind gilded doors, this clash over jewels is more than a dispute, it is a confrontation of legacies. Camilla seeks authority through ownership, through history, through control. Yet Catherine wields influence through memory, emotion, and symbolism, reinforcing the idea that some crowns are earned not through assertion, but through quiet stewardship of the past. Each strategic choice by the younger generation chips away at Camilla's carefully constructed reign, revealing that influence is never fully secured when the ghosts of history still walk the halls. But if Camilla's move was meant to assert control, what unfolded next proved the younger generation had already chosen a different kind of crown. Catherine didn't raise her voice. She didn't need to. The future queen simply looked Camilla in the eye and refused. This wasn't about vanity. It was about Diana, about William, about the promises made in silence and sealed in sapphire. And with that one refusal, Catherine may have cemented her legacy as the protector of the crown's emotional truth. In that quiet moment, a statement was made louder than any proclamation could ever be. Insiders report that Catherine's words cut through the tension like a blade. These were given in love. They stay with my family. It was a refusal wrapped in reverence, a declaration that the past, the memory, and the promise to William's mother could not be altered to suit someone else's ambition. Every glance, every gesture, radiated an unspoken authority. She wore Diana's jewels not for spectacle, but for strength, turning the inheritance of grief into a visible shield of resilience. Each piece carried a history, a story of love, loss, and courage, and Catherine's decision to embrace that weight spoke volumes about the depth of her resolve. The emotional weight of the confrontation extended beyond the jewels themselves. William, often the silent pillar, stood unmistakably behind Catherine. His presence in public events following the confrontation was not subtle. He wore a quiet expression of support, signaling to both Camilla and the world that Diana's legacy was to be preserved, and that Catherine was its rightful steward. Together, they projected an unshakable front, a unity that refused to allow the past to be rewritten for convenience or ego. Observers say the subtle nods, the poised stances at official appearances, and the careful choices of jewelry were all deliberate acts of signaling, reinforcing the refusal without a single harsh word spoken in public. Yet the behind-the-scenes drama was far from simple. Sources suggest that Catherine initially considered returning one lesser-known piece of the collection to Camilla, perhaps as a gesture to ease tensions, but reportedly changed her mind after a pointed remark that left her no room for compromise. It was a moment of realization. Some legacies are not negotiable, and some histories must be protected against attempts at revision. In that decision, Catherine demonstrated not only wisdom but a psychological mastery of the very arena Camilla sought to dominate. She turned what could have been a concession into a triumph, preserving both dignity and principle in a single stroke. This confrontation also signals a profound shift in royal dynamics. Catherine's influence is no longer confined to her public appearances or charitable endeavours. She is shaping the narrative, defining the image, and protecting continuity in ways that quietly, but irreversibly, recalibrate the monarchy. Observers note that her careful stewardship over Diana's legacy positions her as a guardian of emotional truth, someone capable of balancing ceremonial authority with the weight of familial memory. Every piece of jewelry she wears becomes a symbol, a reminder of both past promises and present strength. Public reaction has been swift and decisive. Social media erupted in support of Catherine's stance, with hashtags like #Diana's legacy trending as millions expressed solidarity with her defense of history and honor. The narrative quickly shifted from a private confrontation to a public discourse about loyalty, heritage, and rightful guardianship. Commentators noted that Catherine's calm defiance and principled stance contrasted sharply with Camilla's perceived assertiveness, cementing Catherine's reputation as a figure capable of merging grace with strategic fortitude. But what if this wasn't the first time the jewels had been requested? What if this had been building for years beneath our very eyes? This wasn't the first time, and it might not be the last. Multiple palace sources suggest Camilla had, in fact, tried to reclaim pieces from Diana's collection before, but in silence, through intermediaries, and with whispered justifications. And now, with the most recent confrontation exposed, those past attempts are flooding back into focus. Insiders point to at least 3 previous incidents where Camilla reportedly inquired about the redistribution of heirloom jewelry. Each instance was carefully orchestrated, framed as administrative discussions or questions of protocol, yet the underlying tension was unmistakable. One particularly mysterious case involved a brooch that vanished from Diana's vault, for months a piece initially thought to have been loaned for display, only to never return. The absence of that single jewel left palace staff on edge and fueled speculation about the lengths to which Camilla might go to consolidate symbolic control over the collection. Meanwhile, behind the gilded walls, private friction between Clarence House and Kensington Palace simmered over what could be considered standard procedure. Should Diana's jewelry be treated as state property, or as deeply personal gifts passed down through the family? Sources suggest that each palace approached the question differently, with aides quietly navigating the grey areas of inheritance, public appearances, and ceremonial obligations. Every decision carried weight, not just legal or procedural, but emotional. And the more these questions were debated, the more apparent it became the jewels themselves were not merely objects of beauty, but instruments of power and memory. An aide confided that the real tension was never about ownership. The jewels aren't the problem, it's who they remind us of, they said. Each glittering sapphire, each diamond, each delicate setting carries the aura of Diana, her presence, her legacy, and the emotional imprint she left on those who knew her. For Camilla, every public display of these items on Catherine's wrist, neck, or ears is a silent challenge, a reminder of the ghost she cannot erase. And while previous requests were smoothed over with quiet refusals or the passive resistance of William, each attempt left a mark, slowly setting the stage for a confrontation of unprecedented intensity. Catherine's approach, consistent and unwavering, transformed the handling of these past requests into a form of quiet defense. She never needed to escalate. Her calm yet firm rejections, combined with William's subtle support, created a protective barrier around Diana's memory. Each effort by Camilla to reclaim authority over the collection was met with an invisible wall, a strategy that relied not on words but on presence, consistency, and the power of moral legitimacy. These small but resolute refusals may have seemed minor at the time, but now, in retrospect, they were the sparks that ignited the current storm. And now, the gloves are off. Because this latest battle over gemstones may have opened the floodgates to a much bigger war, one waged between William and his father. While the world fixated on Catherine and Camilla, something far more dangerous was unravelling behind the scenes. Prince William, heir to the throne, has reportedly begun challenging not just Camilla, but Charles himself. The reason? Protection, loyalty, and a growing suspicion that the past is being rewritten at the expense of his mother's memory. Insiders describe a private, tense dialogue in which William made his objections to Charles unmistakably clear. He reportedly confronted his father with the notion that Diana's narrative was not to be altered, that her memory and the promises made to her could not be reshaped to accommodate Camilla's ambitions or to smooth over public optics. Sources suggest that Charles listened, weighed, and ultimately declined to intervene when Camilla allegedly requested his support to recover select pieces of the collection. That refusal, quiet but significant, is said to have sent shockwaves through the palace, signaling a subtle shift in power dynamics that few outside the inner circle could fully comprehend. The rift between William and Charles reportedly extends beyond personal sentiment. Growing tensions over the control of royal imagery, the shaping of public narratives, and even the strategic release of photographs have strained the traditional coordination between Kensington Palace and Buckingham Palace. Communication teams are said to be at odds, unsure whose vision should dominate the headlines, with one faction quietly siding with the heir apparent's insistence on preserving Diana's legacy intact. Observers note that these fractures are not merely procedural, they are strategic, signaling a generational recalibration of authority that may redefine the monarchy in ways the public has yet to fully grasp. William's challenge is not merely emotional, it is tactical. Each intervention, each insistence on honouring Diana's final wishes, is calculated to safeguard the integrity of the narrative, while subtly asserting the influence of the younger generation. By positioning himself as the guardian of truth, William creates a counterweight to Camilla's manoeuvres, ensuring that no attempt to rewrite history goes unchecked. The tension is palpable, a silent chess match played out across ornate halls and behind gilded doors, with stakes that extend far beyond personal disputes into the very perception of the monarchy itself. Some insiders speculate that this confrontation may represent more than a protective stance. It could mark the start of a quiet generational handover, a slow but deliberate passing of influence from Charles to William. While no declarations are made publicly, the subtext is clear. Authority is not defined by title alone, and loyalty to legacy can shift power in ways that ceremony cannot dictate. Each decision, each refusal to comply, carries weight, signaling that control over the royal story is now as contested behind closed doors as it is in the public eye. And while the men debate over legacy and optics, one woman is said to be silently orchestrating her own counterattack, and she isn't done yet. They say Camilla plays the long game, and insiders believe this latest confrontation was no accident but a trap. In the hours following Catherine's refusal, several palace-friendly journalists received eerily timed leaks. Was this Camilla's attempt to regain control through reputation warfare, and could she be preparing to go public with a royal letter that was never meant to see daylight? Suddenly, headlines began to shape the narrative before Catherine or William could respond. Articles framed her as possessive over Diana's cherished assets, subtly casting doubt on her judgment and her loyalty to the family. Sources reveal that Camilla had quietly reached out to select royal biographers, feeding carefully curated details designed to paint Catherine as overstepping boundaries. Every word was calculated, every phrase a probe into the court of public opinion, as if to test how far she could shift perception without direct confrontation. The palace walls, long thought impermeable to rumour, suddenly felt porous as whispers of this strategy circulated among senior aides. The intrigue deepened with the resurfacing of a private letter Camilla had once written to Queen Elizabeth. In it, she referenced Diana's legacy in veiled language, suggesting a moral claim to some of her late predecessor's possessions, though never intended for public eyes. Its existence is now rumoured to be a cornerstone in her behind-the-scenes strategy, a quiet threat that the wrong disclosure could cast Catherine in a controversial light. These are not idle fears. Camilla's network reportedly began pressuring aides and palace staff to re-evaluate protocols surrounding Diana's jewellery, turning private memory into a battleground of influence. Each instruction, each subtle suggestion, was designed to tighten her grip on perception, to reshape the story before it could solidify in the public imagination. Insiders describe a growing sense of urgency inside the palace. The fear was not about law or protocol, but about optics, the kind that could spiral into an emotional public backlash. Every misstep, every unintended leak, threatened to ignite speculation that would overshadow the monarchy itself. Camilla's maneuvers, invisible to the casual observer, sent shockwaves through the palace hierarchy, forcing staff to navigate a labyrinth of loyalty, discretion, and potential catastrophe. Strategists whispered about a PR implosion that could have ramifications far beyond jewelry or inheritance, touching the fragile intersection of power, image, and emotional legacy. This was not merely a fight over objects, it was a war over narrative control, a struggle to dominate history and perception simultaneously. Every leak, every carefully framed comment, every subtle hint was a signal of power being wielded from the shadows. Catherine's refusal had not just blocked a request, it had ignited a strategic counterstrike designed to test loyalties and public perception alike. And as palace aides scrambled to anticipate the next move, it became clear that the battle had shifted from private confrontation to a carefully orchestrated campaign, with consequences that could ripple through the monarchy for years to come. And yet, amidst this silent warfare, the public has already begun choosing sides, guided not by press releases, but by the unshakable memory of a woman long gone. The monarchy can control many things, but not memory, and as this bitter clash over Diana's jewelry unfolds, the people have spoken. For millions, Diana remains the eternal Queen of Hearts, and through Catherine, they believe her light still shines. Camilla may hold the title, but it is Diana's shadow that continues to rule the hearts of a nation. Across social media platforms, polls and sentiment analyses reveal overwhelming support for Catherine's stance. Hashtags honoring Diana's legacy surged almost immediately after news of T. Confrontation broke, with hashtag Diana's legacy trending globally. Fans, historians, and loyalists alike flooded the internet with messages of solidarity, framing Catherine not as a rival, but as a custodian of the memory that Camilla cannot erase. The digital outpouring became a public referendum of sorts, and the verdict was unmistakable. The people's allegiance remains with Diana, and those who carry her memory forward are elevated in the court of public opinion. The response has not been limited to the digital sphere. Influential public figures, many longtime supporters of the late princess, began weighing in quietly yet pointedly. Without overtly taking sides against Camilla, they signaled alignment with Catherine's role as protector of Diana's legacy. Each statement, each tribute, reinforced the narrative that the preservation of history and emotion takes precedence over protocol and hierarchy. Behind palace gates, aides and strategists reportedly noticed the subtle but undeniable pressure mounting, a reminder that authority is not measured by title alone, but also by public trust and moral stewardship. Emotional outpourings from loyalists only amplified the stakes. Letters, petitions, and online campaigns demanded transparency regarding Diana's personal artifacts and the circumstances surrounding their use. For many, these jewels symbolize more than wealth. They are tangible remnants of a life that touched the world, relics imbued with courage, compassion, and indelible presence. Catherine's quiet poise in refusing to surrender them transformed her from a figure of support to a rallying icon. Her silence speaks with louder resonance than any public statement, projecting a strength that binds traditionalists and modernists alike, uniting disparate factions under the shared reverence for Diana's memory. In this unfolding narrative, Catherine's influence is no longer peripheral, it is central. Observers note a growing perception that she embodies the moral authority to safeguard the emotional truths of the monarchy. While Camilla holds the title and ceremonial authority, Catherine now commands a different kind of legitimacy, one anchored in history, sentiment, and the unwavering support of a global audience. Each calculated appearance, every symbolic piece of jewelry she chooses to wear, fortifies her position as the guardian of a legacy that transcends protocol, a position Camilla can neither contest nor erase. The battle, while centered on jewels, is ultimately about preservation of memory, trust, and the continuity of values that the public holds dear. It illustrates a stark contrast between authority inherited and influence earned, revealing that no crown, no matter how polished, can outshine the light of a legacy carefully and courageously protected. Catherine's strength, both visible and subtle, transforms the palace confrontation into a defining moment of emotional sovereignty. But as the world watches this showdown unfold, one final act is about to send shockwaves through every palace gate. Just when the storm seemed to reach its peak, a final revelation changed everything. Sources now confirm that Catherine has held back one priceless, unseen piece of Diana's collection, hidden away, protected. Not even Camilla knew it existed. And now, as the tides shift, it's this final jewel that may become the ultimate symbol of resist. Ants. Rumors swirl that Catherine possesses a ring never worn in public, a secret so carefully guarded that it has escaped inventories, exhibitions, and media scrutiny for decades. Insiders whisper that this was Diana's last private gift, entrusted to a confidant with explicit instructions. It was meant for William's future bride, a legacy to be revealed only when the moment was right. The secrecy surrounding this jewel has made it more than a token. It has become a talisman, a silent weapon in a battle waged across generations, a beacon of continuity amid whispers of contention. Catherine allegedly had the piece reset quietly years ago, ensuring that it could be worn safely while remaining untraceable to the wider public. This meticulous preparation suggests strategy, foresight, and an understanding that power can reside not only in visibility but in discretion. In a household where every action is scrutinized, where public image intertwines with private intent, the decision to safeguard this ring signals a profound assertion. Some treasures are too sacred for display, too potent to be leveraged as mere ornaments. It is a message that speaks of restraint, reverence, and the weight of memory carried in silence. Whispers now suggest that Catherine intends to pass the ring to Princess Charlotte, transforming it into a living link between Diana's memory and the next generation of the royal family. In doing so, she ensures that Diana's legacy will not simply endure, it will flourish, carried forward by those who can honor its meaning and wield it with care. The act itself is poetic, almost defiant. It is a declaration that some power cannot be seized, only inherited with respect, and courage. It is a final statement in a story of inheritance, devotion, and subtle rebellion, one that no title or crown can overwrite. This jewel, hidden yet potent, reminds the monarchy and the world that not all treasures are meant for display. Some are sacred, charged with history, loyalty, and emotional truth. It is a quiet victory, a defiance wrapped in brilliance, and a reminder that influence is measured not by visibility alone, but by the preservation of what is untouchable. In the end, the true value of these artifacts lies not in their sparkle, but in the memory they embody and the legacies they protect. The jewels may shimmer in light, but their true weight lies in memory, defiance, and legacy. And in this royal house, where crowns are worn and broken in silence, the battle over Diana's treasures has only just begun. Thanks for watching. Please don't forget to like and subscribe, and we will see you in next one.